not, I mean, sterling's got two advantages. One, everybody hates it, and the second is it's cheap on historical terms. We're less than 10% away in real terms from the 1976 low. That's, that's devastating. So we've got a lot in the price. However, Brexit's a bad idea right now. If Brexit was ever a good idea in the eyes of some, but an even worse idea now is to have to resort to negative rates. The reason we have low gilt yields with such big debt levels, such big public sector deficits, is that the Bank of England is bailing out the government with its QE and spreading the cost of the pandemic over a long period of time. I can't think of a worse idea than them ever mentioning negative interest rates against that backdrop. So I'm glad they didn't talk about it yesterday, but because it's still hanging there in the background, it's like a little sort of weight hanging on sterling and stopping it bouncing significantly.
When do you see, just briefly, the next bout of volatility? Does it come, with the Brexit negotiations in sort of July, or is it not till October that we get more pound volatility?
No, I think we'll get some over the course of this summer. I think a lot of it depends on the economic data, which, again, the pound does well if the global economy has a V-shaped recovery out of the pandemic, and the pound does really badly if we get big second wave and an L-shaped recovery. And most people, I guess, are somewhere between the two. So we're going to exaggerate everything that happens overall. But look, I mean, did you expect anything from Brexit negotiations? I suspect that we'll just come and go.
Not particularly, perhaps not for some weeks, at least not in the news sense. Okay, thank you so much for joining me this morning. That's Kit Dukes, who is Chief FX Strategist at Societe Generale on Bloomberg Television and Radio this morning. Of course, next week we'll get the ECB minutes plus PMIs and a rate decision from Turkey, so there'll be plenty more from us next week. But in the meantime, stay tuned for Bloomberg Daybreak. This is Bloomberg.
Pressure on profits? Call GEP.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. We fit car tyres for over 500,000 customers every year. We could fit yours at one of over 350 garages, or even on your driveway with our mobile experts, which means you can safely hit the road again and surprise that special someone.
Happy birthday!
From tyre fittings to MOTs, there really is no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
At Honda, we believe in our ears. Listening can help solve some of life's biggest conundrums. For example, if a car breaks down and there's no one around to hear it, does it make a sound? The answer is yes. The new Jazz Hybrid will pinpoint your location automatically and send for help at the tap of a button. And with its personal assistant, you can find the answers to other conundrums like, where is a good vegan gluten-free pizza place with free parking? The new Honda Jazz. Hybrid and connected. Honda. The power of dreams. Connectivity subscription available in selected grades.
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80. Or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda. We're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
The financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Friday, June 19th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
Coronavirus infections in Florida, Arizona, and Texas continue their climb.
Rising cases in California prompt new requirements for face masks.
Lawmakers in Washington debate more stimulus measures.
And traders prepare for a volatile day with quadruple witching on tap.
New York is considering a quarantine on visitors from Florida. New Jersey takes a step toward reopening its shopping malls. I'm Amy Morris. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. The baseball labor dispute continues, and a star player for the Jets has asked to be traded.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
And good morning, I'm John Tucker.
I'm Nathan Hager. U.S. futures are gaining as we head into the final trading day of the week. It's coming up to 5:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 21 points right now. Dow futures, a gain of 193 points. NASDAQ futures are higher by 74 points. 10-year Treasury down 1/32, the yield 0.71%, 2-year yield 0.19%. NYMEX crude oil up 3.5% or $1.35 at $40.19 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.4% or $7 at $17.3790 an ounce. The euro is at 1.1216 against the dollar, and the yen at 106.91. John?
And we begin with the latest reading on coronavirus infections. Cases in Florida, Texas, and Arizona continue to rise. Hospitalizations in the Sunshine State reached the highest level ever. Francis Suarez is mayor of Miami.
The high water mark when we implemented a stay-at-home order was 1,300 cases, and we shut down our entire economy for that high water mark. We just had 3,200 cases, so that's almost 3 times the high water mark.
Meantime, Texas reported its biggest one-day jump in cases as hospital admissions climb for a 7th day. Houston's Mayor Sylvester Turner ties the quick uptick to the state's reopening plans.
We had definitely flattened the curve, and we had very good numbers, and things were moving in the right direction. Now things are starting to swing upwards. You know, people are re-socializing, re-engaging. The state has opened up even more.
We're seeing a similar situation in Arizona, where daily infections rose by more than 6%. That's good for the state's biggest daily increase.
California also registered its biggest one-day jump in cases. That has California Governor Gavin Newsom issuing a requirement for people to wear masks outside their homes. Here with details is Ed Baxter from our Bloomberg 960 newsroom in San Francisco.
It will require people to wear masks in most indoor settings and outdoors when distancing is not possible. Governor Newsom says science shows that face coverings and masks do work. The order comes as California broadly reopens the economy. In most counties, people can now shop, dine in restaurants, get their hair done, and go to church, among other things. Meanwhile, coronavirus cases are increasing, something the state says it expected as more people get tested. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thanks, Ed. In Washington, House Democrats are pitching another round of stimulus to stem the fallout from the virus. They put forth a $1.5 trillion infrastructure plan and want immediate negotiations with President Trump on how to pay for it. Senator Chris Coons is surprised we haven't seen a stimulus proposal from the Senate yet. We spoke with a Democrat from Delaware on Capitol Hill.
I'm really surprised that we're not right now negotiating the final details of the next round, and surprised that Majority Leader McConnell says we don't need to be doing that when the Fed chairman was testifying and the Secretary of the Treasury was testifying that we absolutely need another round. House Democrats are scheduling a vote on their plan before the chamber's July 4th recess. The White House has separately held private discussions about a $1 trillion measure. It's unclear how either plan would be funded.
Now, as lawmakers debate stimulus, Wall Street debates the pace and shape of a recovery. White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow expects a full rebound by early next year. He made that prediction at a small business roundtable with President Trump.
We will be back to where we were in 2019. We will have made up for the lost ground.
Amazing.
It's not going to take 5 years. We will have made it up with some decent numbers by the first quarter of 2021.
Some on Wall Street are less bullish after weekly jobless claims data showed minimal improvement in the labor market. Constance Hunter is chief economist at KPMG.
It makes it very challenging to separate the signal from the noise in the data, and it also makes it difficult to establish if improvements we've seen are going to be lasting, given that it is the path of the virus that's going to dictate the ultimate outcome.
Continuing jobless claims reported with a 1-week lag show more than 20 million Americans still claiming unemployment benefits.
There's no major economic data on today's schedule, though trading promises to be volatile thanks to quadruple witching. Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet explains.
Quadruple witching refers to a date that entails the simultaneous expiration of stock index futures, stock index options, stock options, and single stock futures, while stock options contracts and index options expire on the third Friday of every month. All 4 asset classes expire simultaneously on the third Friday of March, June, September, and December. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Charlie, thank you. We have news on the Phase 1 trade deal between the U.S. and China. Sources tell us Beijing plans to accelerate purchases of American farm goods in order to comply with the agreement. We get more from Bloomberg's Jody Schneider in Hong Kong.
We don't have a lot of details on that deal, but we are being told by people familiar that China does plan to step up purchases of American farm goods to comply with that Phase 1 trade deal. And Mike Pompeo, the U.S. Secretary of State, has said the U.S. will make its commitment under that trade deal as well.
Bloomberg News has learned China is asking state-owned agricultural buyers to make all efforts to meet the Phase 1 deal. That comes following talks with the U.S. and Hawaii this week.
And finally, it's been a wild day in Europe for Wirecard. Shares are down more than 40%. And the news that the payments company is missing more than $2 billion in cash. Two Asian banks that were supposed to be holding the money deny having any business relationship at all with Wirecard. In the past 2 days, the German company has seen its stock slide 75%. Ahead of the cash open on Wall Street, green on the screen, the Dow futures up 195 points, S&P E-mini futures up 21, and the NASDAQ futures 71 points higher. You are listening to Bloomberg Daybreak. 5:07 on Wall Street. Time now for news from around the world. And we say good morning to Bloomberg's Amy Morris.
Good morning, John. New York City is ready to move to Phase 2 of reopening on Monday.
We're always going to be watching for any variations, any new data. That's also crucial to always keep an eye on the data. But we've seen consistent progress.
Phase 2 includes the restart of outdoor dining at restaurants, personal services, and some indoor shopping. The announcement sends up to 300,000 people back to work for starters. A new executive order will allow New York to shut down any bar or restaurant that violates the reopening rules. In New Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy says shopping malls will reopen a week from Monday.
I am pleased to announce that Colonel Callahan will be issuing an administrative order later today to allow the indoor portions of retail shopping malls to reopen on Monday, June 29th.
And you might recall that while New York was the epicenter of coronavirus cases in the U.S., states like Florida restricted travel from New York into their state to protect residents. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo.
What they were saying is if you come to their state and you come from a state that had a high infection rate, was a mandatory quarantine for 14 days, so you didn't infect their state.
Well, now Cuomo says he's considering measures to protect New York, like requiring anyone who visits from Florida to quarantine for 14 days. The Supreme Court decision upholding legal protections for young immigrants came as welcome news to Mayor de Blasio.
That's a huge, huge step for the people of this city. This is, to me, one of these issues that says so much about the distance between where we are and where we need to go.
The court's decision does not guarantee the so-called dreamers will be protected long term. New Jersey lawmakers have passed a bill decriminalizing possession of marijuana. The penalty is now a $50 fine. Princeton University is temporarily suspending their standardized testing requirements for high school students as they rework their admissions process because of the coronavirus pandemic. And Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center have canceled their fall schedules, and the New York City Ballet has called off its annual holiday presentation of the Nutcracker. Global News 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. John.
Amy, thanks. Coming up on 5:10 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update. You made it to Friday, John Stashower.
All right, John. The baseball labor dispute continues the day after Commissioner Rob Manfred emerged from a 4-hour face-to-face meeting with union chief Tony Clark with word of a framework of an agreement. The union rejected the owner's proposal of 60 games. They want 70. Hard to imagine a 10-game difference being enough to cancel the baseball season, but as of now, that's where they are. Yankees president Randy Levine, meanwhile, blasts big-time agent Scott Boras. He feels Boras is the big reason for the stalled talks. Levine says Boras is providing confusing and incorrect information to the union. He's got 71 major league clients. Jamal Adams wants a new contract. The Jets in no hurry. They have him for at least 2 more seasons, but Adams went on Instagram yesterday to say maybe it's time to move on. The Pro Bowl safety has asked the Jets for permission to seek a trade. 7 teams on his wish list. All 7 were in the playoffs last year. Dallas said to be atop that list. Josh Gordon wants back into the NFL. Talented but troubled wide receiver has been suspended 5 times, including last year while playing for Seattle. He was said to have become despondent over the death of his brother, had a relapse into substance abuse. Meanwhile, Dr. Anthony Fauci says it's hard for him to imagine the NFL being able to play games this fall. They are still playing golf. The PGA Tour's second tournament back, Hilton Head, South Carolina. There were some fans because there are a lot of homes on the course. Ian Poulter and American Mark Hubbard share the opening round lead, 7 under par. Jordan Spieth was 3 over, 3 holes in, still finished -5. Brooks Koepka's 4 under. World number 1 Rory McIlroy with his first over par opening round since llast fall. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. John.
All right, John, thanks a lot. And please join us tonight for Bloomberg Business of Sports. Tennis is going to return to Flushing Meadows in August, but with no fans. Danny Zausner, Chief Operating Officer of the National Tennis Center, is going to join us to talk about the economic implications of a spectatorless U.S. Open. That's tonight at 7 o'clock. Tomorrow at 11 a.m. on Bloomberg Radio. Or you can also subscribe to Bloomberg Business of Sports wherever you get your podcasts. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Debbie Hart is president of Bio.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like when your week off is forecast warm and sunny. Or when there's an extra unclaimed sausage left on the barbecue. Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that feeling. Nice, isn't it? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. We can replace your battery at over 700 stores and garages, or even at your home or work with our mobile experts, so you can enjoy an engine that starts first time, every time, and start enjoying the open road again.
Are we nearly there yet?
From battery replacements to tyre fittings to MOTs, there really is no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
If you can build that flat-pack wardrobe without looking at the instructions, you've still got it. If you can manage 5 keepy uppies on your first go, you've without question still got it. If you can toss a pancake to the ceiling and not let it hit the floor, surely you've still got it. And if you can just about fit into those jeans you bought 5 years ago, you've definitely still got it. Brute, still got it.
Emma, the UK's most awarded mattress in 2019. Try it out for 200 nights risk-free.
Made in the UK. Go to emmamattress.co.uk to order now.
David Inglis on Bloomberg Markets.
Let's discuss the outlook for Hong Kong and investment opportunities post-COVID-19 with the chairman and CEO of PAG. Joining us now is Wei Jinshan. Compared to, say, what you see in, say, New York or London, where you have investors and companies from all over the world come together, do you think we should start referring to Hong Kong, and again, not that there's anything wrong with it, as China's international finance center?
No. I think Hong Kong will remain an international financial center, not just China's financial center. You see players like ourselves, whose capital comes from North America, predominantly from Europe, from Middle East, doing investments here in Asia and based in Hong Kong. So Hong Kong is not just a gateway for China anymore. It is an international financial center. It will remain so, in my view, because Hong Kong uniquely has the characteristics that I just mentioned: free flow of capital, free flow of information, rule of law, English speaking, which none of the Chinese cities will be able to match, right? They all know that. That's why we're very confident in Hong Kong's future as a financial center.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm Nathan Hager. Global stocks are rising with U.S. equity futures as investors cheer the latest breakthrough in trade negotiations between the U.S. and China, as well as stimulus talks in Europe. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are higher by 26 points. Dow futures up 246. NASDAQ futures a gain of 84 points. The DAX in Germany up 0.9%. The CAC in Paris up 1.1%. The FTSE in London also up 1.1%. 10 years down 430 seconds. The yield 0.72%. 2-year Treasury yield 0.19%. NYMEX crude oil up 3.6% or $1.39 at $40.23 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.4% or $6.30 at $17.37.10 an ounce. The euro is at 1.1210 against the dollar. The yen 106.96. At 8:30 Wall Street time, we get the current account balance for the first quarter. Then at 1 p.m., it's the Baker Hughes U.S. rig count. And this is quadruple witching day. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Amy Morris with more of what's going on around the world. Amy, good morning.
Thanks, Nathan, and good morning. Coronavirus cases are on the rise. Florida hospitalizations at record highs. Texas reporting its biggest one-day jump in cases. Arizona daily infections rose by more than 6%. The Trump campaign, meanwhile, says it is working with officials in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to protect against the virus. At tomorrow's campaign rally, they say the president will be socially distancing and that attendees can wear masks and use hand sanitizer if they feel it necessary. Texas Republican Senator John Cornyn plans to introduce legislation to make Juneteenth a federal holiday to commemorate the day slaves were emancipated. Texas Democrat Sheila Jackson Lee has introduced companion legislation in the House. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. John.
Amy, after a brief swoon, equity markets, they're back to rallying. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak this morning. So let's say hi to our first guest this morning. That's Daniel Morris, Senior Investment Strategist at BNP Paribas Asset Management, joining us from somewhere in London. Dan, good to talk to you. What's the narrative that investors are seizing upon this morning?
Well, I think you've got two signals that you've seen over the last couple of weeks that are saying things are going better than expected, right? So we all had the concern with the reduction in the lockdown measures that we'd see second waves. Don't forget, we do have the concern of a second wave in the winter when you have the flu season, and then we had another second wave, or got many seconds, in terms of the protests. So all of this is raising the concern, an increase in infections. That isn't the surprise. The concern was what happens next. What's the reaction of governments when they start to see these infections rise? So what we've seen, particularly in Europe, frankly, is a more relaxed attitude, frankly, than we anticipated. For example, you seen most borders opened up within Europe, particularly to allow the summer tourist season, because the economies in Europe certainly depend heavily on the tourist season. And I think it really was the appreciation of the economic impact of the lockdowns that's at least partly behind that decision. And then, of course, in the U.S., you had the first non-farm payroll surprise, but you initially want to be a bit cautious and say it's just one number. But then we had these really great retail sales figures that came out early this week. So it's all saying not that things are great, not that we're back to normal, but compared to those initial extremely pessimistic estimates that we had for GDP growth, it's not going to be so bad. And of course, it's a marginal change that matters to the markets.
Well, do you find yourself at this point, especially with the higher frequency data, trying to separate the signal from the noise?
Well, that's always the case, and particularly now when there's just these huge confidence intervals or uncertainty around any of the figures that you get. So even if you take the recent initial jobless claims, so it was a disappointment, but if you look at it on the scale of what's happened over the last couple of months, it's a pretty small miss. And any economist who's trying to forecast what that number was going to be this week, again, it's just extremely difficult. So we've also got to keep in mind when there are surprises or when there are disappointments, the difficulty of trying to predict what these numbers are going to be, given that all of this is entirely unprecedented.
With earnings season coming up next, I got to wonder, when you have central banks all in, do the usual metrics even matter at this point?
I think they matter, but I think what people are going to be looking at least what we're looking at, is our price-to-book ratios as opposed to price-to-earnings ratios. Because if you look at PE ratios right now, when we know that in the near term, even if things are getting better, they're still going to be very, very depressed, whereas prices look much further out. So that's the risk of the distortion. Nonetheless, the surprises will matter. And also, do we see companies a little bit more confident about giving some type of guidance? That certainly wasn't the case in the first quarter. So I think it's going to matter, do we get more guidance? And, of course, what that guidance is. We kind of anticipate earnings surprises because they kind of always seem to work out that way. But the size of the surprise will matter. And one of the surprises in the first quarter was how positive those surprises were. So even with the negative earnings revisions that we've had for quite a while now, companies still managed to do better than that. So I think we are in an environment where you could see some upside surprise, even with what we know are going to be in absolute terms really terrible numbers for the second quarter.
Is the tech sector its own separate animal in all this?
It really is, and I don't think you can have an asset allocation to the U.S. Without having a separate one for tech versus everything else. Because if you look at valuations, if you look at relative performance, say, versus it's just completely different. And if you look at the index just as a whole and you include tech, everything gets meshed up and you're not going to come to the right conclusion. So it absolutely is kind of the good news is for the sector, we all appreciate the benefits that come out of the pandemic for technology. The investment in infrastructure and internet and streaming and all of this will be great for future corporate profits. But of course, we really have to think very closely about valuations, which now for tech are arguably as high as they've been since we were coming out of the tech bubble.
Are you a V-shaper?
Probably, it's a nice thought. We probably won't go quite that far. We think it is going to be a bit more modest on the upswing, but that's okay. If you look at the projected trajectory of GDP, so essentially looking at what economists have forecasted for the next 2 years, even though you have this huge dip in the second quarter and then the rebound in the third or fourth, a little further out, it looks remarkably similar to what you had during the global financial crisis. Okay? So, that wasn't V, but if I recall, equities didn't do so badly after a certain point. So not to suggest we're going to get returns like that or want to, but even with what we know is going to be a challenging recovery, it's not so negative for equities.
Dan, always a pleasure. Appreciate it. Daniel Morris, Senior Investment Strategist at BNP Paribas Asset Management. And you're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak. S&P Futures 25 points higher.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. AMC Entertainment warned earlier this month it might not survive the fallout of the coronavirus, but the company CEO says the theater chain is in an excellent financial position and says speculation about its finances is exaggerated. A contract dispute between the National Football League and Dish Network means no NFL Network and NFL Red Zone on Dish and its Sling TV online service. Both sides say they're committed to working out a deal. The NFL is US TV's biggest draw. The coronavirus has taken a bite out of the new to the U.S. discount supermarket chains Aldi and Lidl. Researchers find they've lost out to bigger chains since we're making fewer shopping trips. So Reuters reports the German discounters plan to make a heavier push into home delivery. On Wall Street, investors look ready to cheer word China is planning to speed up purchases of U.S. farm goods. S&P futures up 23, NASDAQ futures 76, Dow futures up 204 points. Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
President of the Jewish Communal Fund, Zoya Raines, and her husband Robert Friedman, Jewish activists and philanthropists, talk about why they chose the Jewish Communal Fund for their charitable giving.
As very busy working parents, we wanted to focus more on the charity part of it and wanted to focus more on our children and less on the administration.
The Jewish Communal Fund is one of the oldest and largest donor-advised funds, but at the same time, they're totally up to date and have state-of-the-art systems for us to access and manage our contributions online. The assets in our fund at the JCF grow tax-free, so we can generate more charitable dollars to support the charities that we care about most.
Let JCF minimize your taxes and maximize your charitable giving.
We're incredibly passionate about our charity, and the JCF allows us to focus more on the charity and less on the administration and the headaches.
For more information about Jewish Communal Fund, visit our website at jcfny.org and request a new fund kit.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is £25 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like discovering that the box of chocolates has a whole other layer underneath? Or scoring extra poppadoms with your takeaway? Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage? Yeah, that moment feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. We fit car tyres for over 500,000 customers every year. We could fit yours at one of over 350 garages, or even on your driveway with our mobile experts, which means you can safely hit the road again and surprise that special someone.
Happy birthday!
From tyre fittings to MOTs, there really is no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
What if the world listened more? Maybe it could become a better place. Because when we really listen, we start to notice things that don't sound quite right. They might not seem obvious at first, but listen closely and they stand out like a sore plum. And the more we listen, the more we learn. Our ears help us find belter solutions. And things can change from this to something a little more like this. The new Honda Jazz is a hybrid. Honda, the power of dreams.
Emma, the UK's most awarded mattress in 2019. Try it out for 200 nights risk-free. Made in the UK. Go to emmamattress.co.uk to order now.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
5:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm John Tucker. We're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are gaining despite the latest readings on coronavirus infections. Cases in Florida, Texas, and Arizona continue to rise. Hospitalizations in the Sunshine State reached the highest level ever. Francis Suarez is mayor of Miami.
If you look at all of the areas in the world and in the U.S., where the death rate goes from 3% to 8%, 12%, 14%. It's all based on hospitals being overwhelmed. And so we're closely monitoring that to make sure that that doesn't happen in the city.
Texas reported its biggest one-day jump in cases. So did Arizona, where daily infections increased by more than 6%. And California will now require masks for residents after it also reported a rise in cases.
U.S. stocks are poised for a gain on the week, but Ray Dalio says the future for equities is bleak. The co-founder of Bridgewater Associates warns of a possible lost decade for stocks as corporate profit margins shrink. Belita Ong, CEO at Dalton Investments, is hoping he's wrong.
I really hope Ray Dalio is incorrect, but we are in a market that feels very much like a bubble, or at least at very dangerous levels.
And volatility could be high today thanks to quadruple witching. That's when options and futures on both indexes and equities expire on the same day, traditionally leading to high volumes and large price swings.
And we have news on the Phase 1 trade deal between the U.S. and China. Sources tell us Beijing plans to accelerate purchases of American farm goods in order to comply with the agreement. China is asking state-owned agriculture buyers to make all efforts to meet the deal following talks with the U.S. in Hawaii this week.
And finally, it's been a wild day in Europe for Wirecard. Shares are down more than 40% after news that the company's missing more than $2 billion in cash. Two Asian banks that were supposed to be holding the money deny having any business relationship at all with Wirecard. In the past 2 days, the German company has seen its stock slide 75%. Sticking with Germany, this red headline just crossed the Bloomberg terminals. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is telling leaders the European Union faces very, very difficult times. She says the bloc is facing its worst recession since World War II. Stocks moving higher this morning. S&P futures up 25 points. Dow futures ahead by 238. NASDAQ futures a gain of 77 points. 10-year down, 2/32, yield 0.71%, and the 2-year Treasury yield is at 0.19%. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. 5:33 on Wall Street. Let's get news from around the world this morning. And we say good morning to Bloomberg's Amy Morris.
Good morning, John. It is welcome news from New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio.
Based on the really good indicators we've seen today and for days and days before that, I'm very comfortable now saying that we will start phase 2 on Monday, June 22nd.
The announcement sends up to 300,000 people back to work in New York City for starters. Phase 2 includes the restart of outdoor dining at restaurants, personal services like salons, and indoor shopping with some restrictions. But any bar or restaurant that violates reopening rules in the state risks its license being suspended or shut down. In New Jersey, shopping malls could be open again as early as a week from Monday. Governor Phil Murphy says their numbers are improving, but the virus has taken a huge toll.
We are reporting with the heaviest of hearts the loss of another 38 New Jerseyans to COVID-19 related complications. Our statewide total is now 12,800 lost lives.
When the malls reopen in New Jersey, workers and shoppers will still need to wear masks and food courts will still be closed. As more states start to see their coronavirus cases on the rise, New York's numbers are going down. Now, Governor Andrew Cuomo is considering measures to protect the state.
People coming into their state needed to be quarantined for 14 days. Now the tables have turned 180 degrees, and we're considering it for New York.
Back in March, Florida had restricted travel from New York. The Supreme Court has upheld legal protections for young immigrants. The Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program is intact for now. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio welcoming that ruling.
Dreamers who are part of our city, part of our country, need to know that they will have a bright future here.
The court's decision doesn't guarantee the so-called dreamers will be protected long term. Several New York City Council members are now calling for the removal of a statue of Thomas Jefferson in City Hall. They argue in a letter to the mayor that the slave owner is a reminder of the injustices that plague communities of color. New Jersey's assembly has voted to decriminalize marijuana. Instead of being arrested, violators will now face a $50 fine for possession of up to 2 ounces. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. John.
Amy, thank you. 5:36 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update. And we say good morning to John Stashower.
All right, good morning, John. The two sides of the baseball labor dispute clearly a lot closer to an agreement. The owners have agreed to give the players their full salary for games played in the shortened season without fans. And the union, who at first wanted to play 114 games, has come down to 70. But Commissioner Rob Manfred thought they had a deal to play 60. Union Chief Tony Clark says he never signed off on 60, denies there was a tentative agreement. Manfred says 70 games is impossible due to the calendar and MLB's desire to not extend the season. You would think they could compromise somewhere in between, but so far they have not. We continue to hear about football players getting the virus during informal workouts. 13 cases at the University of Texas. Several Houston Texans and Dallas Cowboys have gotten it, like Zeke Elliott. Dr. Anthony Fauci says NFL players will need to be in a bubble. He finds it hard to imagine the NFL being able to play games this fall. If and when they do, Jamal Adams wants to be on a different team. The Jets' Pro Bowl safety wants a new contract. The Jets have dragged their feet. Adams has only played 3 seasons. He can't be a free agent until 2022 at the earliest, but Adams has asked to be traded. The recent MLB draft was shortened to only 5 rounds. The Boston College outfielder Joe Swansea went undrafted. He has signed with the Mets. His father, Thomas, is a U.S. congressman from Long Island. The 152nd running of the Belmont Stakes is on for tomorrow in New York. 10 horses, no fans, a shortened mile and an 8th course. A New York-bred horse, Tiz the Law, is the favorite. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. John?
John, thanks. 5:37 on Wall Street. It's time now for the Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. And here's Bloomberg's Ed Corey.
JetBlue will add 30 domestic routes, restart some suspended flights, and extend its premium mint service to Newark in a bet on recovery after a collapse in travel demand. The new routes are concentrated in the New York area, but also include Florida and Philadelphia. Well, some New York City business owners are bending or breaking the rules limiting restaurants and retail stores to takeout or curbside pickup. Business owners tell Dow Jones they didn't understand the rules or they're in such dire straits after being closed for months they felt they had to start offering more services to customers. Pandemic-weary New Yorkers may push up suburban New Jersey home prices by the most in 16 years. That's the forecast by real estate consultancy Auto Valuation Group for 4 counties close to New York City: Bergen, Essex, Union, and Middlesex. The firm sees a dip in single-family home prices this year, followed by a 6% jump in 2021. That's your Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. I'm Ed Corey.
All right, thanks, Ed. It is now 5:38 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
I'm Courtney Donahoe on KFAB in Omaha. Milk production drops as farmers manage supply to counter slowing demand.
I'm Steve Podeskin on 1010 Wins in New York. We're talking about Cerberus Capital Management and other investors in Albertsons moving ahead with plans to take the supermarket operator public.
I'm Roger Hearing on Bloomberg DAB Digital Radio in London. We're reporting on British government debt rising above 100% of GDP for the first time since 1963.
I'm Jeff Bellinger, and on WLW in Cincinnati, I'm reporting Kroger shares fell despite the company's strong quarterly results.
I'm Ed Corey on WWJ in Detroit. I'm reporting Fiat Chrysler has received buyout requests from 700 workers at a Canadian plant.
And those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world for you. Some other stories we're following this morning. American Airlines has removed a passenger who refused to wear a face covering. The airline also banned him from taking future flights.